As I shared on last week, we are starting a new sermon series on this Sunday today. And we have the privilege of being able to preach through the Sunday school curriculum, this first set of lessons for the next couple of weeks. Sister Natasha Menifee, our own Christian education director, has written these lessons, and the entire world who uses this particular curriculum is teaching from these set of lessons for the month of September. Amen. And in reverence and honor to the God who answers prayer, we ask God to allow Winchester, Kentucky to touch the world. And he answered that prayer. And in honor of him who has answered, we will preach this word that he has given unto Tasha, that it has been shared with so many. And so I would invite your attention to Psalm 31. Psalm 31. I'll be reading the first 8 verses of the text. Psalm 81. If there's no hardship on your body, I will ask that you would stand while I read these 8 verses for our hearing. Psalm 81. 31, I'm sorry. Psalm 31. I had a Freudian slip right there. I had 81 on my mind for some reason. Psalm 31, 1 through 8. And this is what the psalmist writes. He says, "In you, O Lord, I put my trust. Let me never be ashamed. Deliver me in your righteousness. Bow down your ear to me. Deliver me speedily. Be my rock of refuge, a fortress of defense to save me. For you are my rock and my fortress. Therefore, for your name's sake, lead me and guide me. Pull me out of the net which they have secretly laid for me. For you are my strength. Into your hand I commit my spirit. You have redeemed me, O Lord, God of truth. I have hated those who regard useless idols, but I trust in you. I will be glad and rejoice in your mercy, for you have considered my trouble. You have known my soul in adversities, and you have not shut me up into the hand of the enemy. You have set my feet in a wide place." You may be seated in the name of the Lord. I want to preach this morning from the topic, an urgent conversation. An urgent conversation. Growing up, I used to spend my summers in the country in Mississippi with my relatives, and I had some relatives, some aunts and some uncles who were well up in years. And while my cousins were out playing in the pasture and doing what they were able to do and getting into things and making fun in the country, I would spend a lot of my time talking to my aunts and my uncles who were well up in years. I spent a lot of time conversating with them, and they were conversating with me. And as a result, they shared with me a lot of the things that they had been through, a lot of the stories they told, and a lot of the things that gave our family its identity and its character. They passed along with me through those conversations. Through those conversations, I learned that it's a blessing to have running water. It's a blessing not to have to get up in the middle of the night and leave your house and to go to an outhouse to go to a restroom. I realize it's a blessing to be able to go to school and not have to work before you go to school. I realize that it's a blessing not to have to get up and to go pick tobacco and to pick cotton in a hot sun for a few cents a day because mama and daddy couldn't afford to buy school clothes. I realized it was a blessing to be able to open up the refrigerator and to find something in the refrigerator to eat. I realized it was a blessing to have people in the neighborhood when you knew your neighbors neighbors, and everybody could discipline you, and everybody could raise you, and everybody could talk to you, and everybody could support you, and everybody could encourage you. I realized that through those conversations that there was an identity that I began to cultivate, even though I never grew up having to go in the back of the restaurant or go to segregated restrooms. I realized that through those conversations that it's a blessing to have people who have prayed for you and working on your behalf to make sure that you didn't have to go through the things that they went through. But I realized over time, Brother Van, that my aunts and uncles who were well up in years was not going to last always. And many of them have gone on to be with the Lord. And I look back over my life in its young state, and I wish I could still talk to them and ask them questions. I wish I could still pick their brain and to find out how did they make it through all of life's challenges, and how did they do what they did on barely nothing when I got 10 times or 100 times more than what they ever had, and I'm barely getting by. I wish I could talk to them. I wish I could talk to somebody up in here. I wish I could figure out how to raise 2 kids when many of them raised 10 kids. I wish I could ask them, how did they do that? How did you get your kids to be respectful in the midst of all of that? How did you get, I wish I could talk to somebody. I wish I could ask them uncles and them aunties, how do you make ends meet when you seem to can't look at the ends? Can I talk to anybody in here? I find myself longing for those conversations and longing to have somebody to talk to and to share things with, and having the support of people who are praying me through. But I stopped by here this morning to tell you that there is one who you can always have a conversation with. When daddy has gone on and he's not there, and mama has gone on to be with the Lord, there is one who you can talk to in the morning, in the noonday, and in the midnight hour. Can I just pause here right quick to give 2 or 3 people a chance to look back over your life and to thank God for the fact that you serve a God who never leaves you, neither has he forsaken you. He's a God that you can talk to in the midnight hour. He's a God that you can talk to before the sun comes up. He's a God that you can talk to when things are going good. He's a God that you can talk to, Tasha, when things are not so good. Can I talk to anybody in here that has ever had to have a conversation with God? Well, if you have never talked to God, you just keep on living, because there will come a time you will have to talk to God. As a matter of fact, those of us who have already given our hearts to God know that conversation with God is called prayer. As a matter of fact, prayer is when God talks to us and when we talk to God. Matter of fact, you cannot live without talking to God. As a matter of fact, listen, you can't call yourself a Christian without conversating with God. God has a way of talking to you, not sometimes with an audible voice, but sometimes God will give you the kiss of a raindrop to let you know that he's there. Sometimes you can be in the yard working, grailing, and you can see the clouds in the sky roll across a blue sky, and God lets you know that he's always been right there. For some of you, God has opened up a door and he's talked to you when you didn't know how you were going to make it. God showed up right on time and made a way out of no way. To some of us, God, when we got sick, God talked to us that when the doctor didn't know what to do, God ended up giving us another report. He gave you a second opinion. When the doctor did not know how to mix the chemo together, God said, I'm going to just take the cancer all together and just give your body a remission. Can I talk to anybody in here that knows God will talk to you in the strangest ways? Some of the best conversations I've had with God are not in church. No, some of the best conversations I've had with God are when nobody's around. I'm talking about when God can talk to me and there are no distractions in life. There are nobody around me to take my attention. And when things get good and things go not so good, God has a way of just talking to me in the quiet recesses of my own soul. God lets me know that everything is going to be all right. And I don't know about you, but some of you are here because he told you everything was going to be all right. Some of you are here this morning because you're here by the grace of God, because everything is going to be all right. Some of you have cried many a nights, but he wiped your tears from your eyes. When your eyes could produce no more tears, God had a way of putting you back together again when your heart has been broken. Can I talk to anybody in here that can testify this morning that God has a way of communicating with us through the power of prayer? Prayer is an essential part in the life of the believer. As a matter of fact, I realize some of us are sitting here, and some of us have prayed on various occasions, and many of us think that God may not hear our prayer, or maybe you think that you can't get a prayer through. But I'm going to tell you today that God specializes in prayer answering and prayer with his people and prayer with his children. God has a way of talking to us when times get urgent. And if you have not turned on the television, if you have your head in the sand, you realize that we are living in some urgent times. Our communities are under attack. We are living in urgent times. The family is about all but almost destroyed. We are living in some urgent times. We have times when children cannot go to school without the presence of firearms. We are living in urgent times. We have absentee fathers, deadbeat dads, and we have mothers who are struggling. We are living in some perilous times, not just in the community. We also live in perilous times in our churches, because we are living in a church in a time of convenience and not sacrifice. Everybody wants blessings, but they don't want commitment. We are living in some perilous times. Can I help somebody up in here? But I came by here to tell you that when times get tough, you got to have some urgent conversations. You got to know who to go to when times get tough, because when times get tough, the tough get going. Can I talk to anybody in here? Listen, this is not a time for you to get discouraged. This is not a time for you to have a pity party. This is a time for you to bear down and buckle down and know that prayer changes things. And if it does not change things, it will change you. Can I talk to you today? Prayer will not always change your situation, because God is bigger than your situation. But God is interested in changing you. I know I'm going to get to my text in a minute, but I'm trying to help you understand the power of prayer. As a matter of fact, you cannot live as a Christian without having an active prayer life. But you know what? God has a way of making us pray. Because if you don't pray when it's comfortable, he'll make things uncomfortable. Can I talk to you? Some of the best prayers I prayed, some of the most sincere prayers I prayed is when trouble has come. You ain't never really prayed until you've been in trouble. Is anybody in here ever been in some trouble? Anybody in here ever had something after you or something on you, and it was nothing you could do but to pray your way through? You didn't even know what to say, but all you could say was, Lord, help me. Lord, have mercy on me. Lord, please don't take your hand off me. Please, Lord, don't forget about me. Is there anybody, maybe it's just me up in here, because I haven't been a preacher all my life, Phil, but what I have done is I have trusted in God. And when I know that I can trust in God, I know that he will make everything all right. Well, let me hurry on in my text. Monique, what I found is in this text, David writes this particular psalm, and he writes this particular psalm as a prayer. He writes this particular psalm because David is in trouble. And there ain't nothing wrong with being in trouble. You just have to know who to go to get you out of it. Can I talk to you? Man, I'm giving y'all so many nuggets, man. Y'all don't know what I'm just giving you. Listen, David was in trouble. He was in trouble because there were enemies all around him. He was surrounded by his enemies. And you ain't never really been in trouble till you had some enemies around you. Is there anybody in here ever had some enemies around you? Have you ever gone through some things and didn't know how you were going to get out of it? You had some enemies around you. And I'm not talking about necessarily people. I'm talking about some stuff. Because not every enemy is a person. There are some enemies that live within me. There are some demons that came to church with me. There are some spirits that I have not yet been delivered from. Can I get anybody? I know it's friends and family. I know we got a lot of visitors, but I feel real preachy right now. Is there anybody in here that can be honest about what you deal with? Because not every demon you can see, not every enemy you can see. Sometimes you got to just look at the man or the woman in the mirror, because sometimes there's an enemy in me. Sometimes I got to pray against my own discouragement. Sometimes I got to pray against my own frustration. Sometimes I got to pray against my own doubts. Sometimes I got to pray pray against my own mind, because sometimes I can preach, but my mind get wayward. Sometimes I walk straight, but I want to go crooked. Is there anybody in here that knows what I'm talking about? That God has a way of making you pray in the midst of your enemies. David is going through some stuff. Maybe y'all been delivered. Maybe I need to preach to myself this morning, because if you ain't going through nothing, you just got out of something. And if you ain't just got out of something, you about to go in something. And I'm trying to help you be strong in the midst of storms, in the midst of challenges. You got to stand strong and know that he is God. Lord, I got to hurry up and get to my text. I'm having some good homiletical fun up in here. David is going through some stuff. Miss Connie, he's going through some adversities. And Christians will go through some adversities. You will go through some stuff that you need to get your way out of. But you don't need to go phone a friend to get out of this. No, you don't need to go text message your neighbor. No, you don't need to high five nobody. You don't need to have no special prayer. No, what you need to go is take it to the Lord in prayer. David in Psalm 31 verse 1, Minister Demetrius, he says, "In you, O Lord, I will put my trust in." David makes a bold declaration with an urgent conversation, because David is in trouble. He's in trouble and he knows he needs some help. And he says, "In you, O Lord, I put my trust." Now I know I'm in part A of verse 1, so just hang on with me. He says, "In you, O Lord, I will put my trust." I got to say that again, because that has significant meaning. Because whenever you're going through something, you got to know who God is. When you got to know who to go to get your prayers heard. He says, "In you, O Lord, I put my trust." And Tasha, what I got out of this is not only did he says, "In you, O Lord, do I put my trust," you got to look what he says when he says, "In you, O Lord." Because the word Lord, he uses the proper name of God, which is Yahweh. And Yahweh is the covenant name of God, which means God is the God of relationship and he's the God of promise. Come here. He says, when I go to God, I know who he is, which means we got relationship. So when you go to God in prayer, it reveals your relationship. I gave you the first point right there. Prayer reveals your relationship, which means when you know who he is, Miss Patricia, you know that God can make a way out of no way. You know that God can hold you up when you're weak. You know that God can provide your needs. You know that God can take the scales off one's eyes. You know who he is. He says, "I know who you are." He says, "This is not the first time we've ever talked before." He says, I'm acknowledging to you that I know who you are. And when we pray to God, prayer is an acknowledgement of who he is. Some folk don't talk to him because we don't know who he is. It's hard to talk to a stranger, because strangers have to be introduced. But friends can pick up the phone morning, noon, or night. I wish I had some help right there. David indicates, Tasha, that he has a relationship with God. And he says, "I know who you are." He said, "You the God that called me up out the field when I didn't deserve to be called. You the one who qualified me even though everyone else disqualified me." He says, "I'm going to trust in you." Let me hurry on in my text. He says, "I'm going to trust in the Lord." He makes a verbal declaration of who his trust is in. Look at the text closely. He does not make excuses why he doesn't talk to God. He does not waste time with a bunch of preliminaries. He does not talk about him being the God of creation. He never mentions him to be the God who opens up doors and makes a path in the sea. Because when trouble comes, you don't always have time to do a lot of talking. You've got to get right to the point of the matter. Some of us are spending too much time trying to figure out what to say. But if we friends, I don't need to remind you that we friends. You already know we tight. You already know we were in relationship. So let me get right on to the matter. I trust you. Because you can't have no relationship where there is no trust. I'm still in part A, Tasha. Can I preach it like I feel it? He says, I know your name and we got relationship because I trust you. Now some of y'all know y'all see some folk you still don't trust. Am I right about it? And I'm going to tell you something. David goes to God because he has relationship, because prayer reveals our relationship. Where there is no prayer, there is no relationship. I'm glad you helped me preach it today. And David reveals the fact that the only way he can come to God the way he comes to him is because he has relationship. He tells him, he says, Lord, in verse 3, for you are my rock and my fortress. Then he goes up in verse 2. If you go back to verse 2, he says, Lord, I need you to hear me. I have something to say. It's tight. I'm in trouble. I have no place to go. The people that said they would never leave me are gone. The people I used to trust in are nowhere to be found. He says, Lord, I need you to hear me. Lord, I need you right now to hear. I need your attention right now. I know you are everywhere and you can deal with every situation. But what I'm going through right now, I don't need to take a number and stand in line. No, I don't need to wait on hold. I need a direct line right now. Some of y'all, maybe you ain't never need God to show up. But I need to talk to 2 or 3 people up in here. You needed God to show up. I'm talking about not tomorrow, not next year. I need God to show up right now. I'm not trying to wait till next year. I'm not trying to wait till I need you right now. Can I tell you how to get God to show up right now? He said, you are my fortress and my refuge. In other words, David makes a declaration. He said, man, I know who you are. He said, I'm telling you, I trust in you. He said, I trust in you more than I trust in my money. He said, I trust in you more than I trust in my title. He said, but I declare you are my safe place. Because prayer reveals the safe place of God. When my sons are very different, and they teach me so much about God. My youngest son, who's here this morning, not going to put him on blast, even though I already have. He didn't know it, but he's a great illustration. But as big as he is, he has a way of always wanting to be in my presence. I can be talking to someone in my office, having an in-depth counseling session, and my son will come in, and he will come sit on my lap, and he'll hug my neck, and he'll say, Daddy, are you busy? I know the door was open. Somebody's in my office. I know I'm behind my desk, but he'll come around with his big self, long as tomorrow is. And he will sit on my lap with his long self and hug my neck. And he'll say, Daddy, are you busy? Well, it didn't matter what I was doing before, because you're in my lap right now. So no matter who's in my office, you got my attention. Come here. The way to get God's attention when it's a sense of urgency, you got to learn how to sit in the master's lap. Because it don't matter who else is around you. When you in the daddy's lap, you got his undivided. I wish I had some help up in here. Have you ever had to push your way through? Say, I'm going to church. I don't care what I'm going through. I'm going to church no matter how I feel. Is there anybody in here had to push your way into the master's lap? Yes, sir. Yeah, while on others thou art calling, please don't pass me by. I can't take no number today, God. I need you to talk to me right now. I'm sure trying to. Prayer reveals that he's a refuge. Yeah, in other words, he's a protector. David said, I've been through some stuff, but I know he protects me. The enemy has been after me, but he protects me. Y'all should have shouted already. I'm trying to help you on friends and family. Don't you look at your neighbor on this. But when you look at what God has brought you through and all the promises he's kept to you, you know that God is a protector. When you wasn't ready to live and wasn't fit to die, God protected you. When that car spent out of control, God protected you. God protected you from being stabbed in your back on that job. God watched out for you. Won't he do it? But the one thing that this urgent conversation reveals to me is that not only does David want the undivided attention of God, and he's willing to sit in the master's lap, he's willing to do things that ain't nobody else willing to do to get what he ain't never had. Lord, let me stay right there for a second. Because there are some things that you got to go beyond your limits to get from God. Sometimes you got to press your way through to get to God. I know you don't want a whole lot of struggle, but can I tell you that the struggle is well worth it? The blessing is well worth the struggle. Can I help you out? Let me go and throw this one in. Your 8 o'clock didn't get this one, but this is another Mason illustration. When they were babies, Trey would run around the house and Roz would make him a plate, and and it would be piled high. I'm talking about because I love to eat. And Trey would come to the table and he would nibble off my plate and then run back and go play. But now that ain't what Mason did. Mason learned real quick. Mason said, Daddy, I know I ate before, but you got something on your plate that I didn't have on my plate. Come here, let me sit in your lap. Because I'm not satisfied with what was given to me before. I want what you have. Y'all missed it. Mason would sit in my lap and he would eat the whole time I would eat. And he would eat, even though he ate before, he knew that I had something he didn't have. Come here for a second. Some of y'all don't realize you satisfied with just getting the appetizer. But Sunday school give you the main entree. Bible study give you deliverance. Prayer meeting give you salvation. Can I get somebody in here to help me that ain't satisfied with just coming to church? I need me something that ain't normally on my plate. You satisfied with the preliminary meal? There's something behind that right there. There's something on the stove that God is cooking up that's just you and him. And you can't get that in the main meal. Now that comes when you spend time with just you and God. Urgent conversation. But then in verses 5 through 8, I know, Tasha, this is just something that the Lord gave me out your text here. He says, into your hand I commit my spirit. Then he says, you have redeemed me, O Lord. In verses 1 through 4, he praying about his problem. In verses 5 through 8, he's praising about his redemption. He got 4 verses of problem, but on the 5th verse, he talks about his redemption. Lord have mercy. Let me help you. Only 4 verses of problems, and 5 from the rest of the chapter, he talking about his redemption. Y'all missed it. You got more redemption than you got problem. Ooh, I wish I had somebody who can shout right there. Prayer, this is the last point. Prayer reveals my redemption. Because I got 4 verses of problems, but I got the rest of the chapter of my salvation. David said, every time I think about what you've already done for me, he says, I get happy and I just start thanking you. He says, and because I thank you, God, he says, I commit my hand into your spirit. He says, I've learned to trust you even when I can't trace you. Even though I don't know what tomorrow holds, I've learned to be satisfied with you all by yourself. He says, into your hands, I commit my spirit. Now that sounds a lot like the New Testament Jesus when he hung on the cross 2,000 years ago. And the Word who was made flesh, who hung there one Friday afternoon, could quote David in Psalm 31 and said, I'm going through some adversity, but I recognize that my suffering that I'm going through is nothing compared to the redemption that I'm about to experience. He says one Friday night, he says, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they do. He said, Mother, behold thy son. Son, behold thy mother. He said, I thirst. And then he said, Father, it's finished. He said, into your hands I commit my spirit. Because I realize that I'm not going to be here always. But I also know that trouble don't last always. And because trouble don't last always, I can sing, I can shout, I got joy unspeakable and full of glory. I tell the devil, I will trust in the Lord. Through my up times, I'll trust him. In my down times, I'll trust him. When my children are acting funny, I'll trust him. When I lose my job, I'll trust him. When I ain't got no money in the bank, I trust him. When my mama passes away, I trust him. When my father forsakes me, I trust him. When church folk act funny, I trust him. Have I got a witness in here? He trusted him one Friday night, and he laid there all night Saturday. But early Sunday morning, prayer made a difference in his life. Prayer picked him up. Prayer turned him around. Prayer placed his feet on solid ground. Have I got a witness in here? Have you tried it? Just a little talk with Jesus makes everything all right. Have I got any help up in here? He walks with me and talks with me and tells me that I am his own. The love we share as we tarry there, none other shall ever know. Have I got a witness in here? Won't he do it for you? Won't he redeem you? Won't he take you out the hand of the enemy? Won't he make your enemies behave? Won't he make your haters your elevators? Won't he make them your footstools? Won't he open doors that you can't see? Won't he save your soul? Won't he make you whole? Have I got a witness? Have I got a witness? Say yes. Yes. I can't wait till tomorrow. I'm going to talk to him right now. For the grass withers and the flowers fade, but the word of our God will stand forever. Won't he make a way for you? Won't he do it? Won't he do it? Yes, he will. Yes, he will. Say yes. 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 I know he's all right. I know he's all right. Yes, he. The Bible says, call on him, he'll answer and show you things you did not know. Call on him, Mary's baby. Call on him, Jehovah Jireh. Call on him, the lily of the valley. Call on him, the bright and morning star. He's my Alpha and my Omega, the beginning and an end. Call on him. Call on him. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus. He's sweet, I know. Jesus. I know he's all right. I know he's all right. I know he's all right. He's all right.